Livy Dunn, All-American gymnast and Viore athlete. When you travel and train as much as I do, you find happiness where you are. On the mat or on the sand, movement and comfort are essential. That's why I live in Performance Joggers by Viore. Made from DreamNet fabric that's made of 89% recycled materials, effortlessly soft and made to move as much as I do. My happiness starts here, in the softest joggers on the planet. Get 20% off your first purchase at viore.com/Livy. That's VUORI.com/LIVVY. Exclusions apply. Not only will you receive 20% off your first purchase, but enjoy free shipping on U.S. orders over $75 and free returns. Go to viore.com/Livy and discover the full versatility of Viore clothing. Exclusions apply. Visit the website for full terms and conditions.
Our candidate, great bloke, plumber, rugby player, ex-army guy.
And sexist.
Drinker, one of the lads.
And sexist.
And, you know, if you go into pubs tonight when England are playing football, you would hear all sorts of banter.
Welcome to Quiet Riot, the Cooler Heads podcast that dribbles iced conversational water over the scorched political debate. I'm Andreou.
And I'm Naomi Smith. We're here to bring you a refreshing tonic, a dose of calm, and a very deep breath as we navigate our fast-moving politics.
But we can't change the world on our own, so each week we'll bring you ideas for actions to take so that you can go from keyboard warrior to consummate campaigner.
So draw the curtains, plug in that fan, and help us begin another Quiet Riot. Quiet Riot.
Hello and welcome to Quiet Riot. I'm Alex.
And I'm Naomi.
And I'm Kenny.
Oh, hello, Kenny.
Oh, hello. Hello from Scotland.
Nice of you to drop in.
Listen, you've no idea. Up here, it's a very cooling 20 degrees. There's a few clouds in the sky. You can go out for a walk without getting blisters in the bottom of your training shoes.
Oh, is it all nice in the Highlands? Why
Oh,
didn't you
it's lovely.
take us with you?
Yeah, but it's only going to be nice for the next sort of 12 hours. And then I suspect rain and clouds will return as normal.
Have you got midges?
No, I was in Glen Evis where my house is yesterday, and there weren't any midges, but there were a lot of flies and clegs, which you call
Oh, yeah, the
horseflies.
horseflies. Yeah.
Horrible. So there were bigger buggers that were bothering me yesterday. That's a lot. That's good alliteration.
So horseflies are called clegs in Scotland, are they?
Clegs. Yeah.
Highly irritating. Bite you, cause a rash.
Always
Must be kept
flapping
at bay
around.
from livestock.
Righty-ho.
Okay, before we begin, listeners, I need to ask you all to help us be kept in iced coffees and air-conditioned studios, because producing this much hot air in 40-degree heat is a task worth rewarding. So if you're in a position to do so, head on over to ko-fi.com/quietriotpod to bung us a few quid towards some Calippos and frozen margaritas. Thank you very much.
This week we tried to glean what Burnhamism might look like. Is that the word we're going for? Not by idly gossiping as to who's in and who's out, but by maybe making some suggestions as to who should be in and who should be out of a new cabinet.
And on Friday's B-side, we're going to be talking about the politics of climate, asking if democracy, a system that rewards good news now, can ever be trusted to handle a crisis that only punishes us later on.
And because we want to make sure that this isn't all about the punishment, we'll be peppering both the shows with our regular features to break up the serious with some giggles, some grins, and probably rather a lot of groans.
Quiet Riot. Right, before the week had even had a chance to catch its breath, the Starmer era was over, and what was billed as the leadership contest started to look an awful lot like a coronation. Where Streeting folded his hand and got in behind Burnham, Darren Jones has also ruled himself out. Khan's yet to decide. The nominations don't even open until the 9th of July, but the bookies have already shut up shop. So this week, we're giving ourselves a treat. We're not going to do the dreary business of asking what might be likely. We're going to do the far more enjoyable business of asking what we'd actually like. If Burnhamism is genuinely about to become a thing, what does the cabinet worth getting out of bed for look like? Who do we want around the table? And what would it take for this to be a real change of direction, not the same furniture rearranged with a northern brogue? That's exactly the gap we want to fill. A wish list, names, factions, soft left moment, the Rayner question, the jobs we'd hand out if anyone was daft enough to ask us. And then we return to Farage, because the universe is kind. Yesterday, the man who has made an art form of dodging and weaving around the edges of electoral law decided to do an entire media round lecturing the rest of us about accountability. Every sofa in the country. Burnham's got no mandate. It's all musical chairs. He hasn't got a clue what the man stands for. Mayors only cut ribbons. It was one of the most disastrous outings we've heard from him in years. And we are really going to enjoy taking it apart. All right, chaps, so let's start with the obvious one. Is Burnhamism something you feel you can actually define yet? Or is it still a thing that we can project onto the things that we want? Or is it just simply that he's kind of like good vibes, good favourability rating, and definitely a better communicator? Like, is there content yet behind what we think his premiership might look like?
In my view, the content will only begin to become clear once we know who's in number 11, because you're hearing stories about the people he's sort of considering. Now, an Andy Burnham in number 10 with a Wes Streeting in number 11 is a very, very different animal to an Andy Burnham in number 10 with an Ed Miliband in number 11, or an Andy Burnham in number 10 with, say, Nyata Van Bulle in number 11. Do you see what I mean? Those are genuinely, vastly different options that will define Burnhamism, I think.
Kenny, what do you think?
I think Burnhamism right now is much more of a mood than a manifesto. It kind of, I was listening to him yesterday, and I thought to myself that maybe he'd been to the Westminster equivalent of Aldi and he just grabbed some stuff from the middle aisle and hadn't decided what he was actually going to take out of the shop or not yet. You know, and we know what the stuff, you know, there's bits of content, there's devolution, there's transport buses, there's public control, council housing. There's a more muscular state. There's definitely a less technocratic style.
There's definitely devolution, and he's talked about maybe moving a number 10 office to Manchester, hasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And he's talked a lot about that yesterday, Wednesday. But of course, there isn't a fully costed doctrine that we can call Burnhamism that's got sort of chapter headings and scary appendices. I think the honest answer is that Burnhamism is definitely a proposition at this stage. And like Alex said, the cabinet is where we find out whether it actually can become a programme of any sort.
So my reading of it at the moment is that there are a lot of piggies and not enough teeps, as is so often the way when jobs are up for grabs. So when we looked at that kind of Palm Sunday photo of him that he took in Parliament on Monday, with the enormity of Labour politicians crowding in to try and show their support, what I'm hearing is that there are very irreconcilable differences ideologically between different groups that are vying for jobs within Camp Burnham. You're both dead right. You know, until we know the direction of travel on things like tax and spend, it's going to be hard to know how to define what his vision for the country is really going to look like as differently from Starmer's. And then I also think that things change once people open that red box, when people finally understand, you know, how much or how little money there is, how many and few levers you really can pull. Then you have to, you know, really begin to see how creative within their ideological direction they are able to, and ambitious enough to flex. So yeah, I think therefore the next question we've got to ask ourselves is, while we wait for those appointments, who our dream cabinet for him to build would be. So, you know, we're not talking about bringing back John Maynard Keynes to be Chancellor. From the actual people who may or may not be in contention for these kinds of things. And of course, there could be appointments from the Lords, there could be appointments to the Lords in order for those people to then come into cabinet. Yeah. Have a think about all of that. Alex, give me your Chancellor, your Home Secretary, and importantly, who you want absolutely nowhere near the building.
Look, there are some people that we know are not going to be anywhere near the building because they are very closely associated with Starmer, and they are seen as part of the problem in some ways. And so you have people, I think, like Steve Reed, Liz Kendall. I mean, I would be really, really surprised if people like that retained any kind of incredibly influential position around the cabinet table. Then you have your dead certs, and in those I would include people like Lou Hay, who is both experienced at that higher level, and she was instrumental in helping Burnham with his campaign. You have people like, I guess, Wes Streeting, Ed Miliband, and Shabana Mahmood, who have, in a sense, secured the place around the cabinet table by not going against him at this stage. And, that's part of how politics works, I guess. So they will be, in some senior capacity, I would think. Rayner, I would have thought she would be absolutely in the dead certs for a senior position. But she has said so little. Has anyone heard anything from her about what's going on? Was there something and I missed it? Or
She spoke at an event about social mobility this week, and obviously she is the darling of the poster girl for social mobility in the country, coming from the background that she did, and as the teenage mum to rise to the ranks of deputy prime minister. I mean, phenomenally excellent trajectory to her career that, of course, then was cut short by that HMRC investigation. She's got many more political years left in her.
Yeah, definitely.
Unlike Starmer, of course, who has, I think, said to Darren Jones, thank you for being so loyal. This is the end of my political career, but it absolutely is not the end of yours. You must go and do what you need to do. I'd love to see Angela in the cabinet again. I think Andy would be stronger and better for it. And I do think that tribe, that faction, whatever you want to call it, within the Labour movement needs to have a heavy hitter at the table.
In fairness, I think, given a different set of facts, Angela Rayner would be back in the cabinet even if Starmer stayed as prime minister, having been cleared of that tax situation. I thought their exchange of letters pretty much hinted at the notion that she was going to be back in very, very quickly. And I think that's to her credit, actually, that she is seen as someone who can do a good job and fit in well without being fractional.
Yeah, I mean, she's absolutely critical to this because, I mean, obviously, if I was putting her in, I would probably have her as deputy PM and give her another brief as well that she can get her teeth into. Because if this is meant to be some sort of soft left reset and Rayner is shoved into a cupboard, I can tell you now that that cupboard at some point will become the story. She has to be a core part of this plan. And then, the two other key positions obviously are the Chancellor who can make the case for investment without giving the bond markets a nervous rash. And I think the Home Secretary's got a tough old job because they have to be able to be firm, but without turning the Home Office into even more of a tabloid comment section in many ways, because the media are going to turn on them in no time at all, particularly if we have a difficult summer.
Quiet Riot. Starting or growing your own business can be intimidating and lonely at times. Your to-do list may feel endless with new tasks, and lists can easily begin to overrun your life. So finding the right tool that not only helps you out, but simplifies everything as a built-in business partner can be a game changer. For millions of businesses, that tool is Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the US. From household names like Gymshark, Rare Beauty, and Heinz, to brands just getting started. Shopify has hundreds of ready-to-use templates that can help you build a beautiful online store that matches your brand's style. And you can tackle all the important tasks in one place, from inventory to payments to analytics and more. No need to save multiple websites or try to figure out what platform is hosting the tool that you need. And if people haven't heard about your brand, you can get the word out like you have a marketing team behind you, with easy-to-run email and social media campaigns to reach customers wherever they're scrolling or strolling. Start your business today with the industry's best business partner, Shopify, and start hearing. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/realm. Go to shopify.com/realm. That's shopify.com/realm.
Quiet Riot. I keep hearing people saying, it's got to be Wes for Chancellor because he's the only one that can soothe the bond markets. I don't agree. I also think if you are Andy Burnham, why on earth would you put the person who is the youngest and most ambitious to take your job from you person into number 11? I think that would be the Blair-Brown feud cubed. And I say that because I don't think Burnham and Streeting do come from the same faction of the party in the way that Blair and Brown did. So I think even from the very beginning, that kind of difference in economic strategy would be laid bare. I think the media would just be all over it, looking to crack open any minor fissure between number 10 and number 11.
And Streeting is fundamentally unpopular within Labour as well,
right,
however you manage it.
And may well lose his seat at the next election.
Yeah.
So I would probably put Ed Miliband there. Obviously, the person I don't want anywhere near the building is Shabana Mahmood. I think that the Blue Labour grip on the second half of Starmer's tenure was particularly pernicious. I don't think it's helpful for Labour's polling prospects and for Andy to continue doing nationally what he achieved in Makerfield, which was squeezing over progressive voters into that block. I want to see a much more liberal Home Secretary, so I'm putting Emily Thornberry in there.
Okay.
Foreign Secretary, I'd love Lammy back in that role. I was gutted for him that he was moved from it. I thought he was much better suited there than in Justice. I mean, obviously he's DPM as well at the moment, which is great for him, but I would love to see him back there. What about you guys? Who are you putting in the great offices of state?
I think Shabana Mahmood will sadly stay as Home Secretary, I'm afraid, because I think that will be the easiest and least disruptive sop to kind of keep them quiet for a bit and not have them unleash negative briefing on Burnham the moment he's in the door. So that my instinct is telling me that she's not going anywhere. In the Chancellor's chair, I think it will be Ed Miliband. And I think that would be a really good appointment as well. I mean, I know it's sort of radical, but how about putting some people who have experience of the brief in the various positions that they're meant to represent? You know, there are 5 or 6 Labour MPs who have a background as teachers. How about putting them in those middling positions in the Department of Education? Because I think Bridget Phillipson will also stay in post. She's seen as having navigated some difficult stuff quite well, and I don't think they would move her. Louise Hay, I don't think many people know, but she used to be a special constable. So she's worked in policing and she's worked in the community. I think she's quite no nonsense. You know, how about someone like Torsten Bell or Miata Fanbule or Yuan Yang? You know, someone with an economics background in number 11 in a more senior capacity. If you put a broad brush policy person with good political instincts at the top, like Ed Miliband, then underneath that, there needs to be several layers of people who really know their onions and can make a vision into reality. And people like, you know, Torsten Bell and Miata Fanbule and Yuan Yang, they have no shortage of really innovative ideas of how to raise money, how to borrow a little bit more in order to invest, what sort of things to tax. And so I'd love to see them in those sorts of, and then again, in health, just as a final thing, you know, we've got several people on the Labour benches who used to be or are doctors. You also have Karen Smith, who spent like 3 decades managing an NHS trust. I think people like that should be in the driving positions in those ministries. It would give me such a good vibe about it if he were to say, we're going to do things really differently now. We're actually going to appoint people who know their brief.
So I'm going to ask you what you do with Lisa Nandy. You know, she's, I think, probably from the same wing of the party as Andy Burnham. She's certainly from the same region, but she doesn't seem to have enjoyed DCMS.
She doesn't seem to have enjoyed it, and she's been useless.
But do you think she'll stay there? Where would you move her?
No, God, no. I mean, on the basis of her performance, I wouldn't give her anything, to be honest. And I say that as someone who was a Lisa Nandy fan before she got given that position. I thought she was a very competent, capable politician. She's certainly very good in terms of press and stuff like that. But in her position at DCMS, she did fuck all. I mean, I struggled to see her imprint on any kind of policy. And so was it because she didn't have a feel for that brief? Was it because she's just not very good? We sort of found the level at which she's overpromoted. But she's talked about as someone who will get a very senior position because she's very close to Burnham, her constituency is close to Burnham's, she's seen as a little bit of continuity. And so I guess she's there to stay, but in what capacity, I don't know. Maybe she would enjoy something like
Minister for Towns.
Listen, Alex, you've gone into the weeds with this stuff. I mean, we're well deep on here, aren't we? I mean, for me, there's only three positions that matter, and it's politics we're talking here. So the presentation, the message that the appointment sends out is at least as important as prior knowledge of the brief or any great knowledge of the brief, I would argue. So I would be in agreement with both of you in Miliband. I know that those in the city that'd be a very controversial decision, but from my perspective, Miliband does have experience at the Treasury, and he's also got experience of the big job. So he comes with a heavy keel. And on top of that, appointing him to number 11 sends a very bold signal that actually we are prepared to countenance proper change here. And at that point, it becomes Miliband's responsibility to send a message out that calms the bond markets as well. Not an easy job, but I think if Burnham is serious about doing things differently, that's the sort of signal he has to send out. I think at the Home Office, that's where I would put Streeting. That's a big enough job to keep him occupied. It's also not an impossible job to move him from if things get a little bit difficult, and Streeting could dig himself quite a big hole, if he's not careful. But again, that sends a signal to the rest of the party that we understand, that there's a job to be done here to bring various factions together. And then my third appointment is Deputy PM. And I think, as I hinted, that's where Angela Rayner's going. And I'm going to make her Education Secretary, because that gives her a chance to re-establish her credentials in the public's mind around those issues of social mobility, around those issues of the importance of giving kids a decent start in life, the things that she's really campaigned very effectively on over the years. And it stops her, like I said earlier, being stuck in a cupboard and becoming a story because she's not in the front line. And after that, there'll be horse trading a go-go to decide who gets all the lesser positions. And good luck to them, says I.
Yeah, what about Yvette Cooper?
Yeah, we've not mentioned Yvette. No one's really mentioned her. And actually, I would have thought she had ambition for the top job. She has been quite quiet, depending on what she's going to get offered. If she's not happy with it, she could still yet throw her hat in the ring. And as much as she's probably not my flavour of social democrat, I do think it is extremely depressing that there are no women being talked up since Angela's issues with the HMRC kind of ruled her out from going for it this time. I do want Labour to do better on that front. I don't know that she's loved being Foreign Secretary, and when we look at the media, it's so often people like Jonathan Powell who get talked about as attending and being the mover and shaker at a lot of international summits on behalf of the UK, and you just don't really see much of Yvette, particularly given the fact that we've had Iran and Ukraine kicking off the entire time she's been in post. So I think she was probably more naturally suited to the Home Office herself.
Yeah.
But obviously, we don't see eye to eye on things like immigration and Europe. So this being about fantasy cabinet, not what we think is likely, I probably would put her somewhere where our ideological differences don't make quite such a big deal of each other.
You see, I would put West Streeting in foreign and Commonwealth Office.
What, keep him far away from?
Well, I mean, that's
that's
the traditional notion. But actually, Boris Johnson launched a very successful takeover bid from his position as Foreign Secretary. So
from
it doesn't necessarily apply.
Villa in Italy.
Yeah,
I genuinely think it's a position that he would enjoy, because I think he would enjoy the glamour of the circles he moves in, the international travel and that kind of thing. And I think he'd be good at it. I think it's a position where his ability to be a bit of a chameleon and to mingle with people and to be charming would come into its own. And I think it would serve him very, very well. If I had my choice and he would go there, because we don't know, he might say, no, it's Chancellor or nothing. But if he were amenable to it, I would stick him in the FCDO for sure.
I think if you are trying to keep the markets cool, but yet you really want to put Miliband in Treasury, as I would, then maybe you could put somebody like Streeting into DBT, Department for Business and Trade, that might sort of help shore that up. I'm not saying Wes would accept that. I'm sure he wouldn't. But, I can see him being very credible, talking to the city, the financial services
maybe
company,
work and pensions. Maybe work and pensions.
Maybe
you can say, you've actually done very well in getting to those targets that we needed in the NHS, so have a go at this. He's quite results-driven, I think. He's quite vain. He likes to succeed, and that can be a very powerful force in politics.
Quiet, Riot. Choice Hotels get you more of what you value. Here's a little tune to help you remember. Same drive, different day. Don't you wish you were getting away? Pack your bags and come on through. Texas, Ohio, Alaska, we're up there too. Comfort Inn, it's calling your name. Save on the stay. Oh, and free waffles are yours to claim. Well, I hope you like my little song. Book direct at choicehotels.com.
Quiet, Riot. Let's move on from the personalities then to the policy positioning. We know that Burnham is lined up to give a speech next week, probably on the economy. Kenny, what's the thing that you would need to hear Burnham say to convince you that this was a change of direction rather than Starmerism in a polo shirt?
Oh, that's a good question. I think, first of all, the message needs to be primarily that ordinary people, and that's a phrase I hate, but you know what I mean, ordinary people must feel the benefits of Burnhamism quickly. Whether that's something as simple as cheaper buses, whether it's warmer homes and shorter waits, whether it's more housing, more council housing and repairs. We shouldn't forget that a lot of the pain from Rachel Reeves' budgetary black magic is backloaded to land near the general election. So I think he really needs to get ahead of the pain that's going to start being inflicted in the next couple of years. So that's point one. Ordinary people got to feel the benefits quickly, and he has to demonstrate something very specific that will prove that. Secondly, let's do the grown-up stuff. He needs to address the balance sheet of GB PLC. You know, he's got to show the markets he's not a loose cannon, particularly if he has Miliband as his chancellor. Because if he doesn't, his chancellor is going to be underwater before he's got his cosy on. Investment needs to be disciplined, targeted, and credible. So those are the two sort of adult elements of the speech next week. And then third, from my perspective, is not what he says. Third for me is how he says it. You know, he needs a communication revolution. Labour needs a communication revolution. And that needs to start immediately. He has to start shining straight away. He has to be able to deliver those crisp sound bites, that clarity of message, that vision that has been lacking in Starmerism so badly. So 2 elements and 1 style is what I'm putting on his to-do list for next week.
Alex, what about you? What's the kind of signal for you that this is a new chapter rather than more of the same?
So I feel I need to say, because I think it's a narrative that's becoming very, very established across all these conversations, that the markets, you know, this idea that the markets would rebel if X or Y or Z happen. Markets don't mind government spending. Markets like government spending. America has been spending like a drunken sailor for decades now. Their debt to GDP ratio is much higher than us. Several countries actually around the world are doing the same. Several countries in the G7 have worse underlying particulars than the British economy. I think markets don't like tentativeness. I think markets like being able to have clarity, knowing which way decisions are going, and knowing that you have a plan for growth. And in my view, that's where Reeves never really delivered. I think her plan for growth was never really convincing. It was a plan for 0.5%, 0.8%. It was never a plan that had the potential to deliver 2 or 3%. I would caution against the idea that markets somehow constrain a government from spending a penny more than it has. They don't do that. Markets love the government spending money, actually. They go up when the government is spending money. They just like to know that you have a plan for borrowing it, for what it goes towards, and for paying it back. And when I say paying it back, read growth, because that's the only way governments ever pay back money that they owe. They pay it back by making it shrink in comparison to the total economy. They never actually pay it back. And so that, I think, is what you're looking for. And I don't think someone like Ed Miliband doesn't have a plan that might seem clear and point in a direction that might yield higher growth. I don't think markets are ideological. I don't think markets would go oh, he's planning to spend on new solar energy panels. Markets would love that. They just need to know this is where it's coming from. That's what we're taxing for it. This is where it's going. That's how we plan to spend it back. And this is the growth in which it will result. Sorry. So that brackets
And
closed.
do you think that it could be a little bit out of the Tory playbook? What do I mean by that? I mean, you moot something, it goes on a front page, and if you get a terrible reaction, you don't do it. And you drop it like a hot potato and move on to the next thing. Because he won't be PM this time next week. He will just be the MP for Makerfield. So do you think there's an element of kind of shrewd, let me dip my toe in the water and see what I can get away with?
Maybe. I mean, I'm not a fan of kite flying, I have to say, because again, it indicates a government that is tentative, a government that lacks an ideological direction. And that is actually what markets react badly to. Markets react badly to governments that are pussyfooting. They react badly to people who look like they might decide on policy A and then you turn away from it. That's what markets don't like. You know, they don't like uncertainty. They don't like tentativeness.
At this stage in his not quite yet premiership, he needs to land one or two ideas that cut through straight away with the public. This isn't the time to be throwing ideas out there and then binning them immediately. As tempting as it may well be, he's got policy advisors behind the scenes that can do that sort of work in the relatively speaking, in the shadows. A bit of clarity and a bit of belief and a bit of vision and some balls, you know, that's really what we should be looking for over the next few weeks. Because let's not forget, you know, Parliament's going to go into recess, that relatively quiet period over the summer when he doesn't get a chance to land elements of his vision. Presumably he's going to be lying on a beach somewhere working very hard on the vision.
He ain't going away. He's not going away. If there's no challenger and he becomes prime minister, you know, that will be the busiest period for him. He'll be making appointments and coming up with policies left, right,
First
and
100 days, he's got to get through that.
So, listeners, I hope you're paying attention because we'll be asking questions on what markets like and don't like based on PhD there. Let's move on to what's been happening this week and the first PMQs of the now officially lame duck Stammer, seeing as he's thrown his hat out of the ring. Alex, what did you think about this week's Prime Minister's questions?
I mean, you know, I loathe Baden up with the heat of 1,000 suns. I have never seen a politician so unerringly able to find the entirely wrong tone for every occasion. She was smug. She was just incredibly unlikable, triumphalistic. I mean, you would not want this person. You wouldn't want to have a coffee with this person. She's just thoroughly unpleasant. Absolutely unpleasant. Just laughing at him the entire time and going, oh, if everything's going so well. And then she attacked Bridget Phillipson in a just disgusting way. Let's have a little listen.
Mr. Speaker, they're cheering so loudly. If it's all going so fine, why is he resigning? The fact is, she did let him down. She's the one who snatched the winter fuel payments. She's the one who announced a disastrous budget that killed economic growth. And because of her, but the Chancellor isn't the only person who let him down. The Energy Secretary is putting up bills and killing jobs. He was, he's not here, is he? He was a failed Labour leader, rejected by the electorate, brought back from the wilderness by this man, and when the going got tough, he jumped into bed with the Mayor of Manchester. It's not the first time he's betrayed someone close to him, is it? Does the Prime Minister think that this treachery should be rewarded by being appointed Chancellor? Mr. Speaker, once again, I have to ask, if it's all so fantastic, why is he resigning? And I think it is very generous of the Prime Minister to stick by his ministers because they didn't stick by him. To be fair, they're not all traitors and deserters. Some of his cabinet have been loyal and incompetent. Hands up if you think the Education Secretary is doing a good job. Even she doesn't think she's doing a good job, Mr. Speaker. Even she doesn't think she's doing a good job. She taxed private schools to pay for more teachers. It turns out appointing a spiteful class warrior as Education Secretary was a disaster.
Sorry, Prime Minister. Can I just say, let us think about the language we're using. Because when we leave this chamber, don't be surprised when constituents feel they can use the same language against each other. Let us show a little bit more decorum and respect to each other. Prime Minister.
The Education Secretary grew up in poverty. She knows exactly what it means to grow up in poverty. She was once reluctant to tell her story. I know her story. It's an incredible story of social mobility and success. I am so proud that she is sitting there, and so should everybody in this country who cares about social mobility. She knows that for poor children, education is absolutely vital. I would have thought the party opposite would recognise and understand some of that, but they've fallen so low they don't.
It's amazing. I've never seen this much excitement on the Labour benches. Yes, cheering so loudly while there are 400 knives stuck in his back. Shame on them. Shame on them. They don't like it up them, but they know that what I'm saying is true.
And then quite rightly, I think, Ed Davey came back and made a very pointed comment about not forgetting that, you know, there are people involved here.
So Ed Davey, leader of the Liberal Democrats.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I associate myself and my party with the Prime Minister's remarks about the horrifying train crash in Bedford and the appalling attacks near a mosque in Edinburgh? Our thoughts and prayers are with the victims and their families. Mr. Speaker, can I also recognise how difficult it was for the Prime Minister to make the statement he did on Monday? It's an important reminder, as we debate issues robustly in this House, that we are all human, and it's something that everyone should remember.
You know, Starmer's gone. Like, get over it now. You don't need to keep kicking him in the head. It doesn't help anything.
I shouted at the screen when she did her third kind of, don't you feel betrayed by your own people, Keir?
Yeah, with knives in your back. And
like, what benefit? To what end? How is that help? It's not even going to help you, Kemi. You know, you're just being a nasty bitch.
She was even told off by the speaker.
Yeah,
and just kept going at it, talking about, you know, 400 knives in his back, and he's out. What do you think you're gaining from this? And then, like I said, Davey extolled the virtues of maybe having a little bit of compassion. You know, they were making signs at him, oh, go away, wet, woke, snowflake, they were shouting. And he just stopped dead and literally just stared at her for what felt like 30 seconds, just gave her evils, and then
Paddington Bear special,
went on with his question. And it was yet another sign for me that she may have found some personal popularity by being basically the equivalent of a Twitter troll made flesh. But that's not going to win her the premiership. It's not translating into any popularity for her party. It's just a further degradation of her politics, and she needs to fucking go.
It's going to be fascinating to see how Burnham, assuming that he takes on the big job, is going to manage her level of debate. Because, you know, in the comments today, there were still evidence of decent behaviour as long as you don't invite big knock-in from the playground. But the fact that she always plays the man or the woman and not the ball, the fact that she always basks in personal attacks, means that with a bit of preparation, she's going to start becoming very vulnerable with somebody who's got a little bit more adaptability and a bit more skill. Yeah, well, humanity as well, but a bit more ability in front of the microphone, shall we say. I hope in my heart of hearts that it turns out to be her Achilles heel, the fact that her playground approach to PMQs in particular, but politics in general, is actually something that could be exploited against her. Because when that blows up in her face, I suspect it's going to blow up really very, very badly indeed. And it can't come soon enough.
Quiet, Riot. Honey, what are you listening to? Mom!
Your teen might not share everything with you, but teens share everything with each other. And certain everyday behaviors, like sharing food, drinks, or kisses, could mean sharing bacteria that can cause meningococcal disease, known as meningitis. Although meningitis is uncommon, about 1 in 10 who develop it will die. Ask your teen's doctor about missing meningitis vaccinations. Learn more at meningitis.com. Vaccination may not protect all recipients. Sponsored by GSK.
a burst pipe, a dead water heater, the AC calling it quits. Who do you call? HomeServe is an easy way to handle unexpected home repairs, with plans covering stuff basic homeowners insurance usually won't. Instead of scrambling for a contractor, you make one call to get the repair process started. Join the millions of customers who trust HomeServe right now. Go to homeserve.com/podcast for 50% less your first year. That's homeserve.com/podcast. Savings compared to renewal price, void in Florida.
So speaking of egregious media operators, Alex Farage, he did a media round. Walk us through it. And was there like one single worst moment?
My jaw was on the floor. I have never experienced anything like it. And I've made a little edit of sort of his worst moments.
Oh, lovely.
For people to listen to. And it's quite spectacular that really his worst of the worst moments comes when he's being pressed by Julia Hartley-Brewer, someone very much on his side of politics. And even she thinks he's being an arsehole and telling him fairly explicitly stop being an arsehole, but he won't have it. He won't take it.
If it is a coronation, he will have no mandate whatsoever. So it's right, proper and fair that the British people have a choice.
People vote for individual members of Parliament rather than for leaders in the presidential system. That's the theory, isn't it? At least. Yeah. Well, you're obviously not convinced.
And in this case, it'll be a man that comes in from the outside. And I repeat the point. He will have no mandate. We need an election.
It's interesting what you said already. You've spoken this morning about a mandate, whether or not Andy Burnham would have a mandate. Do your MPs who defected from the Tories have a mandate when there wasn't a by-election?
Well, they would argue, people like Suella Braverman would argue that the reason they left the last Conservative government was on the same policies they contested the general election on. Therefore, they may have changed parties, but they haven't changed policies. So
that's their argument, though, but the voters haven't been given the chance to make a choice.
Well, do you know what? If you go through history, hardly anybody ever holds a by-election when they change sides.
But that is hypocrisy. You're saying it's one rule for you and another rule for them.
No, I'm not. I'm not saying that at all.
You have just had an election in which you could have taken down Andy Burnham, and you lost it badly, in truth, didn't you? Even if you'd added your vote together with your old enemy Rupert Lowe, you wouldn't have won. Now, was that because of your choice of candidate? You chose a man who had tweeted his sexual fantasies about a TV star. Wasn't really serious, was it?
16,000 votes would win most by-elections.
Wrong candidate?
He's a plumber, a rugby player, ex-army, one of the lads, likes a beer, and it was male banter. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't good. It didn't help. I will admit that. It didn't help.
You were given £5 million by a crypto billionaire. Sorry?
No one cares. Apart from the media, no one cares. No one cares at all.
The Parliamentary Standards Watchdog care because they are investigating
Well, they are. You're right. There's been a complaint from the Conservative Party chairman. They're investigating it. We'll see what they say. I believe it to be a wholly private matter. The Standards Commissioner may take a different view.
You've said that £5 million was for lifelong security for you. You've also said it was a gift. Can you just clarify?
No. Let's be clear. Let's be clear. It's an unconditional gift. I can spend it on cars if I want to. It's entirely up to me, right? But there is a specific reason for this. I have been physically the most attacked and endangered politician in Britain. I know, because of the division in politics, that I will need protection until the day that I die. And that is my intention.
So, Mr. Farage, how much of that money have you spent?
Look, it's literally none of your business. If I've given it to charity, but the truth is, I haven't. I know what it's there
You haven't
for.
spent any of it?
It's none of your business. It's literally none of your... How much of your salary do you spend on beer, on petrol? It's none of your business.
You're saying you need security, a legitimate point.
Yep.
How much of that money have you spent on security so far?
I'm sorry. No, I'm not going to answer that deliberately. Willfully. It is not your business at the BBC to put me in danger, therefore I will not answer that.
I would just like to clarify, do not make any mistake. We are not putting you in any danger at all.
If I answer that question you ask, so I won't.
So let me ask you something about you. Would you be happy if the next Prime Minister of this country secretly banked a £5 million cheque from a billionaire whose business interests he was promoting?
Well, I would refute that entirely. I'm not promoting his business interests.
I asked you in general as a principal. I hadn't come to you, but would you be happy if any candidate to be Prime Minister banked a secret cheque for £5 million?
I'm sorry, why is it secret?
Well, you didn't reveal it. It was revealed by the newspaper you'd taken £5 million.
Why should I?
Because we believe that people should govern in the national interest, not in the financial interests of themselves or their supporters.
I wasn't in politics.
You're telling me you weren't discussing becoming an MP?
I wasn't in politics.
I interviewed you about it, Mr Farage.
Yeah.
We did a 40-minute interview about whether you might become a member of Parliament.
And as you well know, it was a very, very difficult decision. I'd far from made my mind up. Look,
and you took £5 million from a billionaire who wants government and the Bank of England to change its policy.
No, I want government and the Bank of England to change their policy. I have done for years. I've been saying this consistently since 2019. There is a whole new world out there of AI, tech, crypto, you name it, and we're being left behind.
But you're promoting something that would massively financially benefit a man who gave you £5 million, and you didn't think we deserved to know it.
No, hang on. Number one, I wasn't in politics. Number two, I don't believe there's anything in the rules that says I had to declare it. Number three, of course, it is being investigated by standards, so perhaps I'd better not say too much.
Why we have rules on taking money, particularly vast, unimaginable sums for most people in the country, £5 million into your own bank account. We have those rules to be sure that you're doing what is in our interest and not in your interest. So it's very clear, Mr Farage, you've got lots of generous benefactors. You could give this money back.
Well, Boris Johnson got a gift from the same person.
Will you give this money back?
Will you give your salary to charity? How about that? I'm
not running to be Prime Minister,
If you
Mr.
give
Farage.
your entire salary to charity, then maybe I will.
Most people think of a gift as, I don't know, a bottle of champagne, a box of chocolates. Not £5 million. Do you understand why most of us find it absolutely impossible to believe that someone who lives on the other side of the world, no matter how much he loves Brexit, and I don't think anyone loves it more than you and me, that they would go, you know what, Nige, love you, here's £5 million, no strings attached. Do you understand why that, frankly, is not believable?
I think you'll find he voted in Hampshire, so I think you'll find that's where home, actually. But whatever. Yeah, they may well do. And people inherit vast sums of money, and all sorts of things happen in life.
He's not your dad. You didn't inherit it.
People inherit money.
He's a crypto billionaire living on the other side of the planet, and he gave you... But again, you talked about, you said this is an unconditional gift. But did you think that Keir Starmer should have declared his free suits from Lord Ali?
Well, they were political.
How is a suit political and £5 million? More money than most people would ever earn or enjoy in their lives. How can that not be political?
By the way, this is a hugely successful British business.
Good for him.
All right, which is a good thing.
Yes, good for him.
Yeah. Julia, it's a private thing. It wasn't a political donation. Yeah.
Is it a gift, a reward, or is it for your security? Because
no, it's an unconditional gift. I can spend it on Ferraris if I wish to. All right?
Are you spending it on Ferraris, or are you spending it on your security?
None of your business.
And I don't know what was going on. Did he think the 5 million wasn't going to come up? Like, did he?
Maybe he didn't think it would come up from her.
But it came up from everyone.
Everyone, and it's going to keep coming up.
I know, but what was striking, what was notable, is that he tried a different disastrous response to it each time he was asked.
And none of them worked.
He was trying stuff out, and I would have thought if he knew this was going to come up, he would have had a line and stuck to it. But no, instead he kept going, are you going to give all your salary to charities? I can spend it on cars. I mean, what are you talking about? That, you are a politician that's vying to be this country's prime minister, and some dark donor that lives on the other side of the world and made his money in crypto has given you £5 million. And your response is to tell Nick Robinson, what have you spent your salary on in the last month?
Exactly. And this is the guy that went hell for leather over Wahid Ali buying Keir Starmer a new pair of spectacles and a couple of suits.
That was brought up.
If hypocrisy generated electricity, Farage could have solved bloody net zero before breakfast was over. This week he really could have done.
There was also a fantastic bit where he kept going, Andy Burnham needs to call an election, etc., etc. And someone brought up the fact that of his 8 MPs,
most of them weren't elected as Reform, yeah.
4 were elected as MPs of a different party. And he said, well, that's different because people vote for an MP personally. They don't vote for a leader or a party. And then in the next breath, he was arguing that Andy Burnham doesn't have a mandate because people didn't vote for him as a leader of a party. And it's like, which is it? You can't just spout this stuff within the same minute of being on air and hope no one notices that what you're basically saying is it's all right when we do it.
And people who were elected as Reform and have now gone off to Restore, he's not calling for them to run by-elections in their own seats because he knows that Reform will not win them. Kenny, he's also sort of, tried to disparage Burnham, who obviously he sees as much more of a threat than Starmer, as a mayor whose only experience is cutting ribbons, that he hasn't really had executive power, doesn't really understand how to run anything. Does that kind of belittling of Burnham's record backfire on him and Reform? Because he's not really run anything either.
Well, he used to work in the city and then he's run his own little money-making political enterprise for 10, 15 years. But, is anybody paying attention?
30. 30.
Well, yeah, exactly, yeah. Does anybody pay attention to him? I'm not sure. Yeah, those that do pay attention, it probably does, because Burnham's entire pitch is that he has actually run something visible and he's achieved some visible successes. Mayors aren't prime ministers. Farage has a point if he says running Greater Manchester isn't the same as running the Treasury, but dismissing mayors, metropolitan mayors specifically, as people who just cut ribbons, that's really stupid politics, because it turns out that voters actually quite like tangible records, I'd suggest. I'd also suggest that things like buses and housing and policing and transport, local identity in Clacton and Farage are not words that appear in the same sentence. Manchester and that part of England know and get Burnham because Burnham gets and knows and understands that part of the world. Farage has none of that.
Can I say,
yeah?
It's not like me to defend Farage, but I will say in his defense that his only experience of mayors is Andrea Jenkins. So maybe there is some evidence-based to his belief that they're absolutely useless people who just cut ribbons.
Yeah,
that was not on my bingo card, but surely it means that he is worried. He would much rather the next election was Farage v. Starmer. Yeah, absolutely.
For sure, yeah. I mean, he even called him on a couple of interviews a proper opponent. I think he's shitting himself, to be honest. As you know, I think the Reform project was already in serious trouble, sliding in the polls, unable to convert their national lead into constituency MPs. And now he's got to be really worried because, like all confidence games, which is what Reform is. Reform is a long con. And so it absolutely relies on the idea that Reform are going to do it. They're there, they're on the rise. So if suddenly they're on the fall and there's someone in charge that seems to have some magical Reform eliminating formula that they proved in Makerfield, even though I don't think that's true. I think it's obviously a lot more complicated than that. But that kind of reputation for dragon slaying can be very difficult to fight against, especially when you don't have an opportunity to measure yourself electorally against it. It can very easily take hold as a narrative that actually Reform are yesterday's men.
I think he's worried because he knows that what John Curtis says is right. He is bright enough and long in the tooth enough in politics to know that Burnham ain't going to win Reform voters from Farage. But that what he effectively did in the Makerfield by-election was to squeeze Green and Lib Dem voters down to almost nothing and get some of the wouldn't votes and the don't knows and the didn't vote last times out for Labour. Our friends over at More in Common, obviously Luke Trill, regular on this show, have got some new polling out today asking how Burnham's leadership would reshape politics. So they've done current voting intention compared with if Andy Burnham was leader of the Labour Party. And what you see is that Makerfield thing happening at a national level. Those flows to Labour are gains from Don't Know, Lib Dem and Green. There is not any evidence that I've seen yet that Burnham is able to convince Reform voters to back Labour. But what there is, by comparison to Starmer, certainly, is this ability to win back that progressive bloc over into the Labour column. And I think Farage knows that and knows that under first past the post, if he is having his vote split by Rupert Lowe and Labour is more effective at consolidating the progressive bloc behind Labour, he ain't getting the keys to number 10.
I agree with all of that. I think there's something else that needs to sit as the headline on what's happening with Farage at the moment, though. And the headline isn't Burnham from where I'm sitting. The headline for me is the 5 million. The 5 million is what's got cut through and popped the bubble with a significant number of those who are Farage soft, if you understand what I mean. And Burnham has come along at the point where Farage is already leaking support because of this £5 million headline. And it's a really, really easy figure, and it's a really easy issue for voters everywhere to understand. And it's a very easy question for interviewers to throw at him. Then you factor in the fact that Burnham is able to start corralling left-leaning support, certainly in Manchester. And you can start to see how Burnham can take advantage of the 5 million issue. But I don't think that Burnham himself is what's popped the bubble. I think Farage, as usually happens with these sorts of people, has punctured himself.
Yeah. And it's interesting you should say that, because the Liberal Democrats already have a campaign going. They've put out posters which quote Farage's thing that he told the Telegraph, that he gave me £5 million as a reward for Brexit. And so they've put his face, that quote underneath it, and under that there's a big thing that goes, 10 years on, are you feeling any richer? And I think that kind of thing has the potential to really, really cut through. So what are our calls to action today?
Well, we've had quite a lot of fun with our fantasy cabinet.
We certainly have.
So I reckon go and have a bit of fun yourselves, guys. We found a online tool that you can play around, plop MPs into the positions around that table that you would like to see. We'll leave a link to that in the show notes. Go and have some fun. Let us know what you come up with.
And on a slightly less fun, but equally worthwhile point, and tied to what we were talking about, Reform are also in trouble about the way in which they harvest and use data. The Good Law Project has taken them to court over it. They tried to get the action thrown out because they were harvesting people's data and trying to build what they said was a database of every single voter in the UK. And so the Good Law Project took them to court and went, you can't do that, mate. And then they denied they had ever done it. Then they claimed they deleted it all as soon as the request came in. And it's like, you can't really do that either. You can't just delete data when an individual comes in and asks what you're holding on them. You can't at that point delete them and say nothing.
It must have been really bad.
Yeah, and so the campaign goes on, and we'll leave a link to the latest update from the Good Law Project. And if you can support that cause, that's a good cause too.
Quiet, Riot.
Right, and now it's time for some much-needed good news. It's time for Grin and Share It.
Good news is welcome to me. Bad news is hell come to me. Good news. I want good news.
What have you got for us today, Naomi?
Well, actually, it's one that's relatively close to home, but I will start with home. And Alex, you are very much an artist. No one could deny that. Uh-huh. And the cultural sector has given this country so very much. Whether it's Black Sabbath, 4 working class lads from Birmingham who more or less invented heavy metal, or Oasis, the Gallagher Brothers and co, who were signing on for their gyro long before they were selling out stadiums. Both have had a massive contribution to the economy in the last 12 months. When Sabbath played their farewell show last year, it poured about 20 million into the local economy. Oasis obviously did that massive tour of the UK last year, giving the nation about a £1 billion shot in the arm.
Wow.
So that's pretty good, right? For a few blokes who started with very little but time, a bit of space and a loud idea. But that time and space is getting really, really hard to come by. And as one art sector charity boss put it, imagination and creation are products of time and space. And lately, there hasn't been much of either going spare. So for inspiration, I looked to my old home of Ireland, where they decided to do something quite radical about it. A few years ago, they ran a little experiment, basically universal income. They paid 2,000 artists, quite a modest weekly income of €325. That's about 283 quid in then money. No strings attached, and waited to see what would happen. And what happened was wonderful. The artists made much bolder and braver work. They were able to take risks with their craft. Some even were able to hire other people to help bring their ideas to life. Like there was a woman called Eleanor. She's a multimedia artist from Cork. Before access to this scheme, she was working reception part-time to cover her rent. Wasn't really able to bring her ideas to fruition, but with the stability that she got from the scheme, she was able to make her first film. And filmmaking is now a really huge part of what she does. And she has said that this whole thing has just validated my existence as an artist. And when you crunch the numbers, the pilot ended up costing €25 million and generated value of €100 million in benefits. So it more than paid for itself. And also you generated loads of lovely art, which in itself is just an intrinsically wonderful thing you don't want to put an economic number on. So Ireland made it permanent. And it's the first basic income trial in history, really, to graduate from nice idea to here to stay.
Okay.
And it's kind of catching on. Like Norway are doing their own version, France is as well. There's a sculptor in Oslo called Tobias who says something really lovely. He was like, with all the difficult things happening in the world right now, bringing people together through culture has never mattered more. And so there it is. You know, the UK have been a factory for incredible art form for centuries. And I think it can be again, if it makes like other Northern European nations and gives this a whirl. Because sometimes the kindest thing you can do is just give people the time and the space to dream and flourish. So there we go. With all of that, I think we can grin and share it.
Oh, that's lovely. That's absolutely lovely. Thank you, Naomi. And listeners, as ever, will drop a link in the show notes so you can not just grin, but also share it. Or if you decide, you can start lobbying for this to become a reality in the UK too, or maybe crowdfund it.
Tell Lisa Nandy. Quiet Riot. And that's the end of this week's main show. We will, of course, be back tomorrow with Quiet Riot B-side and again at the weekend with Sunday School.
And before we go, please don't forget to head over to ko-fi.com/QuietRiotPod and sign up for $5 a month or more so that we can keep bringing this show to everyone free at the point of use, regardless of ability to pay.
You'll get invites to our live online editorial and Ask Us Anything sessions, access to our Discord channel, and a whole lot more besides. But if it's not an option for you right now, do help the show in other ways, for example, by tuning into other cooler head shows like Podyssey and Behind the Lines, or follow us on Blue Sky and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts.
We love you more than air conditioning. Just about.
Bye.
Bye.
Quiet Riot is an audio production from Cooler Heads, written and produced by Andreou, Naomi Smith, and Kenny Campbell. Music by Mariana Sangeeta, artwork by Simona Canelu, and edited by me, Alex Reese.
Quiet Riot. I'm an insomniac. I'm an insomniac. Staring at the ceiling. Waiting for my phone to switch on. Yes, I'm an insomniac. I'm an insomniac. And all I can hear is the sound of that clock. The sound of that clock. I'm an insomniac.
Your package says delivered, but delivered where exactly? The hallway? The lobby? Your neighbor's apartment? Instead of playing detective with your deliveries, get a mailbox at the UPS store. We'll sign for your packages, text you when they arrive, and keep your deliveries low-key under lock and key. Get 3 months free mailbox services with a new annual agreement at the UPS store. For full details and to get your coupon, visit the upsstore.com/offer.